broadcast our worldwide networks. It's Two Small Biz Guys. And now, here are your hosts, Zen Benefiel and Ray Silverstein.
Wow, we're back again. Isn't that great?
I'm so happy to see you, I think.
I can tell.
Right.
You got your rosy glasses on. So
I do.
That's a sign of happiness.
But they don't have rosy lenses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Rosie's out playing today.
Okay. Well,
so
no comment on that.
Right. Thank you. So we're going to have kind of a John Perkins. Oh, no, not really. That's Confessions of Economic Hitman. We're not going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about Confessions of the Pricing Man, how price affects everything. It's by Herman Simon, and it's a great book full of insights, and that I think, perusing material, it's something that small business owners really ought to have a good read or even listen to the show so that we can synopsize everything for them and look at what pricing's all about.
Well, first they should listen to the show. That's number one. But actually, small business owners don't give enough thought about pricing. And he makes a very interesting point, and that is when you start your business, the first number one consideration is what is going to be your pricing position? Because once you set a pricing position... It's
upright or prone?
What was that?
Upright or prone?
Oh, I guess maybe laying down, but so that you can rest if you set the right price.
Prone isn't necessarily punny at this point.
Right. But the premise is that once you set a price position, you're kind of locked into it. It's hard to change because, in other words, if you're going to be a low-cost seller and you raise your prices, people get upset. If you're a high-price seller, people expect a certain high value. So most people kind of come in the middle, but the aspect is if you don't set the right price level, it's very difficult to change. For example, I was at a restaurant last night, and in their happy hour, they used to give you pepperoni sticks. So last night we go there after the summer, and
spicy.
They now, pricey, yes. We took a bite of that whole thing, but the aspect is now they said the pepperoni sticks are 99 cents. Not great, but it's a change. And some of the customers were getting a little bit disturbed by that.
Well, yeah, that's like going to a Mexican restaurant and getting charged for chips and salsa.
And I remember in Chicago one time, there was one of the major restaurants. They started charging for bread, and people were very upright about that. And pretty soon they had to give you free bread. But the aspect is...
You mean uptight?
Right, upright and uptight. But
yeah.
Because upright means a pricing position. So
nothing prony about that.
Yeah, going back to your comment, we had to get back to the right position. So the aspect is, if you don't set the right position initially, it can create problem for you later on. And I thought that was very interesting.
And one of the things he mentions in the book, the question of what's the most valuable or important aspect of pricing, and Herman says it's simply one word: value.
Right, but it's value perceived by the buyer. So it's also very interesting in a product, people have more or less an idea what value is. When you get into a service, it's very, very subjective as to what is the value.
I really value that.
I'm glad to hear that.
That perspective.
Wait till you get my bill.
Yeah. You got mine. So good pricing has 3 prerequisites according to Herman. He says that it creates value, the quality value, and communicate value.
Right.
So how do those things intermingle in his theory? What did you find in that? Because you've had, some amazing a span of experience over your years, and
when you held your breath, was that because you were jealous, or what?
I am. I hope I'm as fit as you by the time I'm your age.
Well, I hope so too.
Now, so back to our topic for the day.
Okay. Well,
how does that weave together? And back to my statements about your experience. You own several companies. You've started up things. You've grown them. You've sold them. How did that mix intermingle with your business development?
Well, I think.
And did you engage those
we didn't really think about that. I mean, the problem is that most small business owners don't really think about pricing. And after I read this book, I said, oh, no, there's a lot of things I did wrong. But a lot of things we did right. But the interesting aspect is when he talks about the value position, he says, first of all, you have to have a valuable product. In other words, the quality has to be good. People have to believe it's good. The second aspect is that you have to communicate that and reinforce the perception that is good. And the last part, which I probably is most important, which is the retained value. In other words, when people use it, are they happy with it? So they think about it, and therefore they give testimonials, they give you references, they give you referrals. Mm-hmm. So if people go out and they expect a good dinner, in other words, it's advertised as a good dinner, and all of a sudden the dinner's not so good, the retained value is very low. And therefore they don't.
And their Yelp or Fourscore or whoever they use to say, hey, don't go here.
Right. So the retained value is very critical.
Which is really interesting in the digital world now, where that instantaneous communication, the testimonials that used to be so hard to pull out of people. I mean, word of mouth travels, right? But now it's accessible from anywhere at any time. And if you've got a smartphone and you sit down even close to a restaurant, you're going to start getting nudges from them to come visit them.
Okay, but the aspect is you're talking about the testimonial portion, but also the internet world has also created the aspect of being able to check pricing a lot of different places. So a lot of people go in and they showcase, they go into a store, they look at it, they take the part number on their phone and see what the price is.
Right.
So it means that pricing today is far more difficult than if you go back years ago.
And that makes it really tough for the buy local folks, because they're competing with that kind of pricing structure. And how do you make up for that? If you have a better product or better service, let's say with this example that it's actually more of a product that you're buying online or from a local merchant, how do you differentiate yourself in order to maintain that local buyer market?
Okay, well, that comes back to positioning. And the positioning is that
upright or prone?
The upright or prone,
or
right.
45. You're leaning.
You're big into this upright or prone today.
Oh, no, we're going to list, actually.
Okay. But the aspect is that your positioning is that if you deal with us, you can return it with no hassle. We take care of it. There's a fault. In other words, people are very happy and confident to work with you. So therefore, they're willing to pay the premium that you might charge. So that becomes...
And today, most of the time, we don't have interactions with other people. We're pretty much a secluded society because of the internet.
Okay, but that becomes the aspect of the giving out the information by he calls the communication value. The communication to people gives the assurance that you have a aspect that it's going to be a better product. Now, when you get into the luxury class products, it's also interesting that in that area he talks about people have a perceived value that this is either a snob appeal or it's going to be so much better. Mm-hmm. And if you lower the price in theory, to create more value, create more demand, actually the demand goes down in the luxury area. So sometimes you're better off raising the price.
So Brookstone isn't doing so hot anymore, eh?
I don't know. I don't see Brookstone stores that much often anymore.
Right. Or what was the other one? It starts with a T.
Well, you think about it for a while.
I try not to think.
Okay. I can tell that so far from the conversation. So you must...
Hey, be easy on me now.
So your position
I'm just
right
a young kid still.
I know. So right now your position must be laying down, not upright. So
no, I'm listing.
Okay, but the aspect is when you go back to pricing, he talks about pricing drives profitability. And you have to have profitability in order to stay in business, or otherwise you're out of business. So one of the questions is that your profit is the margin over and above your variable cost, which is what sometimes people call a contribution margin. So if you were to raise your price 1%, what would that mean to your profitability? So in some cases, if you have a net profit of, say, 4% or 5%, if you raise your prices 1%, you might have a 20% increase in profitability. So now
if
you
you're
go,
maintaining that level, the same level of sales.
right, if you maintain the same level of demand.
Right.
Correct. So the question is, if you raise 1%, would it really be accepted? Now this goes into the elasticity aspect as to demand, your classical economists.
Mm-hmm.
But he talks about the aspect that price really drives your profitability. And I think back when I had my company, since you were talking about that, and we used to run promotions.
Get which company?
This is the tool company.
Okay.
We used to run promotions on various products. And the aspect was, did we sell, and I think back today, did we sell enough product to make up the contribution that we were losing if we hadn't given that promotion? So the key really in business is the contribution
So
margin.
the promotion being the variable cost?
No, but the key is the contribution margin dollars that you get.
Okay.
So if I was to not roll over the price, maybe my volume doesn't go up, but therefore I might have more contribution margin. It was interesting. I have a friend who used to be the largest picture frame manufacturer in the world, and he had a large injection molding machine making some frame, running 24 hours
Now,
a day.
that's an upright business.
That's an upright business. And you say, picture this.
Right.
And this was running, this press
Well, we're going to frame it this way today.
Oh, I like that. Okay. So he was running this. I want you to hang on every word now. And he was,
my God,
oh
here we
my
go.
God, this is really terrible. So he had this press running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I said, Phil, what did you do? Buy another press.
Phil the framer.
So I said, did you buy another press? And he said, no, we raised the price to bring the demand down to the capacity of the press. And I thought that was really interesting, because normally my inclination would be to go out and buy another machine. So these machines are $4 and $5 million.
Sure.
So now I would have, possibly, if it was me, I would have two machines running at 60% capacity or 55% capacity.
So you've got, coupled with that, you've got 40 and 40, so that's almost an 80% loss of utility.
Well, but it's a loss. So in other words, he's saying he increases gross margin contribution.
Because he used the capacity of the machine and created greater utility.
Right. So he's talking about gross margin dollars.
Right.
And I thought that was a very interesting approach. Now he was very much like a
Great way to frame it. Huh.
great framer, right? And he would frame his profit and loss statement. That's right. So the aspect is that
Was it an elegant frame or a simple frame?
well, any kind you want,
Okay.
from A to Z. But the aspect is that small business owners, they have to think about the contribution margin. I don't know if they get involved in their accounting and how knowledgeable they are, but you want to look at what your fixed costs are, and every dollar above variable costs goes towards covering your fixed costs. And once you cover your fixed costs, you're now into profitability area.
Now, I suppose, in commenting towards how involved you are with your accounting process, just starting out, I would imagine you probably have a pretty good handle on the numbers.
Could
Would
be.
you?
I would imagine most people starting out are probably more interested in revenue. In most small business
We've talked
owners,
about this before. It's a sales-driven environment, so most folks who are starting a business are more concerned about developing the sales, and oftentimes get ahead of themselves and don't have the cash flow to back up the inventory necessary to make those sales.
Well, but okay, that's true. But we also talked about earlier, just on the show, about when they first start off, they have to think about what is going to be their pricing position, where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And but when you first start out, normally what happens is that they'll take any kind of order because they want to get something. Something's better than nothing on the premise. But I'm referring primarily to people who are in business rather than the startup, because the startup, I think the number one is, what is my position going to be? How do I maintain that position? And how do I give the information out so people will believe my pricing position and be confident in it? But as you go along...
Don't you have to believe your pricing position? And that's really what the one of the 4 Ps is about in your business plan, is being able to do the research, the market research, your product research, your cost, your break-even numbers, all of those kinds of things to build into the business plan, which oftentimes business owners don't do.
Okay, but then they get involved into market research, and then the aspect is, okay, so market research says something should sell for $5, and let's assume I can't afford to sell for $5. I have to sell for 6 or 7. So the aspect is, how do I create the differentiation to get that extra value? So it becomes a question of how I create the perceived value in the marketplace.
Promotion and placement for one, or two.
Whatever
And
it
one,
might be.
and two.
Okay. So
we're going on rock and roll rather than the classical view.
Well, the classical view basically is demand and supply. In other words, it's interesting. He talks about where most people have a definitive price. Now they say our price for this is $1.
Mm-hmm.
When you get it, it's very interesting when he talks about this, where you have a demand curve, and some people are willing to pay more than $1, and some people don't want to pay $1. So your most profitable aspect is if you can cover your variable costs, and if you can identify customers who are willing to pay more and customers who are willing to pay less. And the key word here is, can you identify them? And
right.
And the aspect is, so I get somebody like Ed over here, and Ed looks like a guy who'd pay $1.50. So, but Zen,
of course I would.
Of course you would.
Because I'm just loaded.
Oh, yeah. Good. You're the guy we want to sell to.
No, I've been drinking.
Oh,
right.
Well, that's the best way to get you. Well, you're going to put some.
Yeah, we haven't talked about a condition of the buyer, right?
Yeah. Well, he's going to put
how best to approach them and when.
Right. He's going to put some fumes on the prices. So
sure.
But Zen, on the other hand, says it's only worth 75 cents. So the aspect is that if my cost is say 50 cents, and if I sell it to Ed, I get $1 profit, a contribution margin.
Right.
And if I sell it to Zen, I get 25 cents contribution margin. So I'm getting contribution margin in both cases. Now I have a friend who used to be in one of these groups I was in, and he used to talk that the cost of the product was direct labor plus direct material plus hassle factor. So he wanted to cover the hassle. In other words, dealing with some customers is a hassle, and what is that worth to you to deal with?
Sure, especially if you've got one that you've got a schedule with and large production numbers, whether they're pulling in the schedule or pushing it out or asking for better pricing, or that. Granted, there can be a lot of hassle factor involved at times.
Okay, but the other aspect is, what is really price? Because is price the $5 that somebody quotes, or does price include the delivery?
It runs along the 101.
Right, that's true. Or does price include delivery? Does price include pay me in 60 days? Or does price include pay me half in advance? So price is really made up of many, many different components that go into the pricing format. And I can see you're getting ready to speak.
Yes, I am. And we're going to stop speaking for a moment, take a break, and thanks for listening to Two Small Biz Guys. We'll be right back with you talking about the Confessions of a Pricing Man. And thanks for listening.
Two Small Biz Guys with Zen and Ray. We'll be back after this.
The digital world is vast. Is it working for you? Would you like some qualified help? Zen Benefiel is a wonder with social media who leads focused and organized workshops on multiple platforms like Facebook, Google+, and LinkedIn. He leads by example, not theory, and teaches you how to live large and lively on the web. From blogs to SEO, his web presence speaks for itself. Take advantage of his expertise. Visit BeTheDream.com and click on Web Wizardry. Hire him while you can.
As a business owner, have you ever felt alone at the top? You don't have to be. Ray Silverstein has worked with many business owners for over 20 years facilitating peer advisory boards. He is the proverbial mentor and tormentor. A Pro President's Peer Advisory Board is a confidential monthly meeting of non-competitive owners that give support, feedback, and knowledge. They know the adage, all of us are smarter than one of us. He has walked in your shoes, having owned and sold 2 companies with sales in excess of $60 million and approximately 1,300 employees. In Young President's organization, he participated in peer advisory boards and felt it was a key to his success. His passion is to help small business owners succeed. He knows peer boards work when you are open, don't feel like you know it all, are willing to put issues on the table, and willing to take criticism. Be his guest at a Pro Advisory Board meeting to see if it works for you. There's no commitment to join, and you'll have a great experience. To sample a free Pro Business Owner Peer Board, email ray@proprez.com. That's ray@proprez.com. There's no commitment or charge. You're listening to Two Small Biz Guys. Now, back to your hosts, Zen Benefiel and Ray Silverstein.
Welcome back, and thanks again for listening to our bantering, and hopefully we're providing some kind of insight and maybe even some triggers to help you grow your business better.
That's the price they pay to listen.
You are in a mood today, my friend.
It really is. Thanks for jumping in there, Ed. We were talking on the break, and we were having a tale of two cities, or
Yes.
actually a retale of two cities,
Yes.
or something of that sort. That you had a great story
I
to
do.
tell regarding what
I worked for a major retailer for about 10 years, and I was actually very successful with it, and I enjoyed my time there. But when I...
Hence the loaded.
What's that?
Hence the loaded.
Yes. I was offered my own store. This was in the year 2000, and they asked me to take over a very old store. All the other stores were twice the size, much newer. This was the oldest store, actually one of the oldest in the company. And it was, instead of being 35,000 square feet, it was 10,000 square feet. And nobody wanted this store. And I went to my boss at the time and I said, I don't know if I should accept this promotion because it's going to put me in a position where I don't know. I know how to run
produce
these.
the dollars per square foot that they
Exactly.
would expect from a larger store.
Exactly. And he pulled me aside. He goes, Ed, I cut my teeth at that store 6 years ago. If you don't take this, I'm going to kick you in the you-know-what. I'm like, okay. He goes, you're going to be able to get away with a lot more stuff than we can because each store had certain things that they had to set up, certain ways they had to do things.
Shelvings
because
and end caps and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Right?
So I get there, and I was amazed when I went through the books of the money that this store turned, but their profit margin was very narrow. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how am I going to change this? So I went through and I knew one of the best-selling items that this company had, believe it or not, and I can say it was Sears. It was for Sears Hardware. And
Sears has everything.
there you go.
No, Sears had everything.
It had everything. This was when it was right at the beginning of the, before the downfall of Sears majorly. I said, well...
Those were the prone years.
Exactly. So believe it or not, one of the best items that they had that they sold no matter what, that had the highest profit margin, was shop vac filters for wet dry vacs. We sold them for $17.99. It cost us $2 to get them.
Wow.
So what I did, the first thing I did when I walked in after I introduced myself, I said, see this front end cap? I want this to have this particular stock number of shop vac filters, this one only, and I want it always filled. We had to fill it every day. I was in a unique position to where I didn't have to conform to the rest of the company. So as to what you guys were talking about, you have to find a way to adjust to get your customer to buy something from you that they can get somewhere else, maybe even cheaper. Why are they going to come to you? I always had them in stock. You didn't have to walk to the back of the store to get it. And I sold the crap out of them. After 1 year, my profit margin, believe it or not, based on those shop vac filters, jumped 35%.
Okay, but what the example that you gave is that you had an item with a very high
Yes.
contribution margin. Cost you $2, sold it for $17.95.
Right.
Most people don't have that kind of contribution margin.
No.
Most products. So every time you sold one of those and you were selling, you said the crap out of it. So,
Yeah.
But every time you sold one of those, and you probably sold more product because you had it, and therefore you were having more contribution margin coming into the store. Now maybe your revenue on the sales wasn't as high as maybe the year before, but your contribution margin and profitability was higher. So what happens is most small business owners are also inclined to look at revenue, the top of the P&L, rather than the
Exactly.
bottom. And also what happens in a lot of bigger companies, people start looking at market share. So if our market share slips, they become very concerned. So when they lose market share, they think it's terrible. So they cut their price to regain market share, but they actually give up gross margin dollars.
Well, to that point, though, you got to understand that I didn't sacrifice the rest of the store either. We still ran the store well. It turned a much bigger increase in sales altogether. But as what you were saying is, whether it's a huge markup or just a little markup, or if Zen's going to pay $1.95 and I'm going to pay $2.95, depending on what the item is, or the product or the service, you have to think about how it's going to affect your bottom line, the bottom of the P&L. And that's the perfect point you can make with that, is especially if you're a small business and you're not part of a big Fortune 500 company, is you've always got to look at that bottom line.
That's right.
And in retail, like you did, you took an item that they wouldn't necessarily come to the store to purchase to begin with, but you put it front and center so that, everybody, it's like those are the things that you would normally forget to buy.
Yeah.
It's because you use your shop vac a lot, and it's like, oh, I got to get a filter. And you go in and you get stuff and you come home and it's like, dang, I forgot to get the filter. Well, there it is up front, and because of that, I think maybe I ought to get 2. That way I've got a spare. So the next time I need it. So, there's those kinds of factors that by placement,
right,
which is really, that's part of the 4 Ps, product, pricing, placement, promotion. Right. So by that placement, then you drove that contribution factor sky high. And
the funny part is the company didn't catch on for about 2 years that this is how I was turning the profit, because I wouldn't tell them. I looked like a hero. I was Scotty from Star Trek. I was the miracle
you don't
worker.
Want to reveal your secrets.
They finally caught on because I had more inventory of shop vac filters and shop vacs in general than any store in the company. And I, had this little tiny store, and you walk into my back room, and there was just one section dedicated to this. And when they found out how that worked, I wasn't in trouble. They commended me. It was a very good thing.
But that also may not have looked too well on your immediate managers that should know that by keeping track.
There's the downfall right there. You just hit the nail on the head.
Well, but that brings up the question: what is the objective? And if the objective is to store profitability, that is what you want to measure by. So a lot of people, we're getting off the topic here, but a lot of people here don't have the right objective. And the aspect is that you're in business basically to make a profit. The profit is there to sustain the business so that you have that you don't go out of business, that you keep people employed, that you have business for your vendors to employ people. So the aspect is that a lot of people take the wrong objective, like I was mentioning, market share. Or last year we sold 1,000 of this, and this year we only sold 800. The question is, what is the contribution of each of those? If you made a price discount to sell 1,000, sometimes if you cut your price by 20%, you got to sell 25% or 50% more to have the same gross margin dollars.
Now, Herman does mention too, and I agree with you that when it comes to being in business, you're in business to make money, right? Now, with what Herman talks about at the beginning of the 21st century, we saw a huge surge in interest and research into behavioral economics, revealing many phenomena that classic economics cannot explain. Now, what does that mean? Well, for me, that shows that events like the development of B Corps, which have more of a community focus and effort in their vision and mission statements to perform certain things in the community that's above and beyond their profit margin or their the P&L statement, and affects that because of that relationship that they develop in the community.
Well, okay, but the community aspect is part of the price, and is part of the communication. So if you define your market or the people that you're selling to, as you define your customer, are people who are interested in the aspect that you want to promote, whether it be community or charity or whatever it is.
Right.
Those people might be willing to pay a higher price or to travel to your location because of that commitment.
Right.
So,
And then that goes back to the conversation we were having about the buy local constraints that some companies have in the price war that happens on the internet.
So this
turns that around.
Yeah, so this goes back to definition of customer, and it goes back to the aspect as to what is a customer really willing to pay and the value that they perceive. But when you're talking about the behavioral economists, they get into a lot of very interesting phenomena, which is contrary to classical economics.
I think we call that psychographics now.
Well, I don't know.
Or that's part of
Psychographics
it.
is more into the personality of people, but
Isn't that behavioral?
well, could be, but they're
Okay.
talking about prospect theory as one of the concepts, and prospect theory basically is margin.
We're neither prone or upright now. We're spinning.
Right now we're really spending, because in prospect theory they talk about marginal utility, and when you go out to buy something, you in your mind have a value, a marginal utility that you're going to get from this product or service.
Mm-hmm.
They also talk, that's a positive marginal utility, but you also have a negative marginal utility, and that is
How much am I paying for
how
it?
much am I paying for it?
What's the pain
Right.
that I'm willing to endure?
Okay, right. They also discover is that from research is that the negative marginal utility is greater. In other words, if a marginal utility was +1 and a negative marginal utility is -1, the -1 would outweigh the +1. So people have a sense of loss, and they are more inclined to avoid loss. You have this in when a person has a very classical area. If you talk to an investment advisor, person bought
Or
a stock.
insurance salesman.
Okay, person buys a stock at 100, goes down to 80, and so the investment advisor says, well, your stock may come back up to 100 maybe in a year or 2 or 3, but we have a stock here we're recommending that we think has a much greater return, and you can get a much greater return. The person says, I'm going to wait until it comes back before I sell it, because they don't want to take the loss. The loss to them is real.
Oh yeah. Well, you got a 20% hit.
Okay, so when you get into marginal utility, there's some pricing theories. For example, car dealers, when they say you buy the car, we'll give you back $3,000 today.
What the heck does that mean?
Okay, what it means is that the marginal utility, I feel much better because I'm getting $3,000 back right now. So it makes me feel psychologically in my behavior is much more, I'm apt to buy it than if I didn't get
But
the
it never goes in your
$3,000.
hand. It just comes off the price, which is inflated anyway.
You go to the grocery store, right? How many times you used to be married, but how many times did your wife come home and say,
Did that once.
Honey, I saved you so much money today. I bought all these things at 25 or 50% off. So we saved so much money. Well, maybe we didn't need any of those, but who knows what the real price is.
She still had a great time, and she didn't have to pay for it.
Okay, so when you go to Macy's or any one of these major department stores and they have a sale, 40% off, and today take an extra 10%. Well, people feel from a marginal utility that they're getting a better buy.
Absolutely. Buy now and save.
Yeah. So it goes into pricing philosophy.
Isn't that kind of a convoluted mechanism for selling, though?
Why is it convoluted? What do you define as convoluted?
Well, the logic is twisted, even though it works.
Well, okay, but you're talking about, are people really rational or are people emotional?
Oh, they're emotional when it comes to buying. You bet.
Well, but they're emotional
most of the time.
You're emotional most of the time.
Yeah, and speaking of emotion, we're going to take a break so we can calm down.
Okay.
We'll be right back with you. Thanks for listening to Two Small Biz Guys.
Two Small Biz Guys with Zen and Ray. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Zen Benefiel with Be the Dream Transformational Life Coaching and Professional Services at BeTheDream.com. Our mission? To provide leading-edge transformational personal and business development services. Our services include life coaching, enterprise coaching, partnering facilitations, and possibilities coagulating. We've been in business since 1988. In times of massive change, you need someone who can help you adjust and transform. I can meet that challenge with you, offering a stellar skill set from serving individuals and companies for over 20 years. I invite you to peruse BeTheDream.com and put me to the test. Fill out the coaching assessment survey and give me a call. The first call is free, and you can find out if I'm what you are looking for in a coach, consultant, or service provider. Call 480-633-7179. Let your dreams mold future realities. BeTheDream.com.
Business owners want to call their own shots, make appropriate income, and control their destiny. Our passion is to help you achieve your goals. A Pro Peer Advisory Board is just the thing. It's a confidential monthly meeting of non-competitive owners facilitated by a pro who has walked in your shoes. He's your mentor and tormentor, moving you ahead. When you have issues or opportunities keeping you awake, where do you get help? Pro boards give support and non-biased feedback from your peers. To sample a free Pro President's Board meeting, email ray@propres.com. There's no commitment or charge. Email ray@propres.com. You're listening to Two Small Biz Guys. Now, back to your hosts, Zen Benefiel and Ray Silverstein.
Oh, okay, we're back. We are back. So we are talking about emotion in the last part.
Now that we're calmed down, there's
Yeah.
a key question that you mentioned earlier that actually even while we were on break that you asked your groups. And basically, for those of you who aren't aware, Ray runs peer advisory groups, and he's got several of them, has done it since the mid-'90s, which are business owners, CEOs, and the like that are at least have 5 employees and $500,000 in revenue to begin with. Most of them are way beyond that now. But this is a question that you posed to them.
Before you ask the question, see, you just gave commercial value to doing peer boards and groups. But let's go back to the question.
Well, it's our show. We can do that.
That's right.
That's what you do.
Darn right.
Okay.
If we don't do it, who will?
Right. I had a show by that name years ago.
What, who will?
No, simply who.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a community activism show. So it was about who was
Okay.
doing stuff in the community, right? So the key question, now that we're finally back on that and our emotions are calmed, if I asked you to tell what really determines the value of your product to your customer, what would you say?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because I asked this question at
So
all
think
these-
about that for a
yeah.
moment. Let's put it on pause. And you as a business owner, if I asked you to tell what really determines the value of your product to your customer, what would you say?
Okay. Now, I think it's key for a business owner or a key party in any business to really think about what value they bring to people, because that's the value that people perceive and they're paying for.
So you can unlock that profit potential.
Oh, that was very good. That's right. That's right. That was very good. But the aspect there is,
That's what happens when you get old.
no, I don't call older. I call it maturity. See,
You're mature. I'm just older.
I sometimes just act immature, but that's a different aspect.
Okay.
There's
but
a difference between growing up and growing old.
I'm
that's
never
right.
growing up.
Okay,
Right.
but the aspect is, what value does any business bring to the prospective customer? And if they can't answer that question, they have a difficulty. There also becomes a question of pricing power. When you have your price, is Warren Buffett has if I can find it here, had a very cute quote.
He says
quotation.
the single most important
You found
business
it.
decision in evaluating a business is pricing power.
But read the
and-
next part.
And if you need, I will. And if you because I see it goes on. And if you need a prayer session before raising price, then you've got a terrible business.
Right. So the aspect is, in your business, you need to have pricing power, which
Yeah,
means
you can't just throw it up against the wall and see what sticks.
okay, but also means
Or can you?
Okay, but it means that you have to communicate value to people create
Hey,
the
look,
value
it's
to
sticking.
people.
There's value in that.
That's right. It's sticking. So you need to have stickiness, what I call stickiness. And you need to.
See, I led you
communicate-
right into that one.
Yes, you certainly did. But I think stickiness is key in business, that you need to have concepts, ideas, or in this case, value, that people believe, understand, and want to retain it.
Now, what do you see in regards to the consumerism or the consumerist society that's getting a lot of heat right now in order to change our buying position and choices?
Well, explain what that is.
Well, we've got a world that we're destroying. We're polluting our air, land, and water, mostly because of the production that's necessary to provide these widgets
Okay.
and services to the population
Okay,
that are being driven to buy.
Okay, so the aspect is a person has to. We're not going to get involved in this discussion, but the aspect is if a person really believes.
Shucks, it's such a good discussion.
Yeah, but that's a different topic, and I don't
Okay.
want to go there. But if you get in,
That's what maturity will do. We can
Okay.
say no.
But the person who believes in that philosophy
Mhm.
is willing to pay a higher price for products that they believe does not, damage the community, damage the environment.
Right.
So that goes in.
We
but,
call that buying green.
well,
now.
you can call it buying green, but it means that the company or whoever it is
in the marketplace, that's green.
Yes, but the person
Development.
but the person who has that has to be able to communicate that value to people, that we are green, our product, our service is green,
Absolutely.
and that will appeal to people who are willing to pay maybe the question is how much for a premium. For example, when you talk about Buy American or Buy in the Community, when we used to manufacture mechanics tools, we used to have a discussion as to what would a consumer be willing to pay as a premium to buy a U.S. made versus a foreign made. So we were estimating that if we were within 10%.
Depends on whether it's important to them
Yeah, but
to
we
do
were,
so.
But we were an estimate if we were within 10%, we would be okay. But in most cases, the import products were far greater, and that's why you have a lot of that's Walmart philosophy. So
Right, and Walmart, Sam's Club, all those kinds of things, which we'll get into in just a minute. But you mentioned the willingness to buy local, buy American. When it comes to those internet sales now, the prices that are available from foreign-made or of foreign-made products that potentially are, at least perceptively, of equal value, quality-wise, that are far less expensive. So there's a whole shift. At least I can see this in my meanderings on Facebook and Google Plus and all that kind of stuff, where there's this trend toward that foreign purchase.
Well,
That's really
the
putting a
consumer-
dent in American textile industries, especially.
Okay, well, textile industry is gone. But the aspect is also when you go on the internet, you don't physically pick up the product and see where it's made. They advertise the product, they describe the product, but they don't have country of origin. If you walk into a retail store, you can see country of origin. Now, country of origin means that 50% of the purchase parts are made in this country. Because I used to get involved
I would
in this.
disagree with that. From the
well,
the websites that I've seen, they do mention where the products are made.
Okay, fine.
It's
That's
kind
fine.
of because the internet's transparent, and so this transparency, even though it's made there, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than what you could get here, and you don't know the quality until you actually get it in the mail.
Okay, but that goes back to what is the drive of that person? What is the audience? The other aspect is, which we kind of led away from, going back to the behavioral economists, is what they call the anchor.
Oh, behave. Now, you should be telling me that.
Yeah. Well, we'll slap you down. It's all right.
Then I'll be prone.
But price anchors are very interesting, and we all have this experience. And the example I give, because many years ago, my father went out to buy a pair of shoes, and this will tell you how long ago. So he came back and he said, I just saw these shoes at Montgomery Ward's, which tells you how long ago that was. So he said they were $75. And he says, I used to pay $15. So in his mind, because of the experience that he had, the anchor was $15.
Boy, if he went out to see a $150 pair of Nikes now, he would absolutely flip.
Well, now I'm going to read you a quick little story that he cites here on Anchors. He says, the brothers, Sid and Harry, ran a clothing store in New York in the 1930s. Sid was a salesman and Harry the tailor. If Sid noticed that a customer liked a suit, he would play dumb. If the customer asked about the price, Sid would call out to Harry in the back of the tailor shop, "Harry, how much does this suit cost?" That's a nice suit. That's $42, Harry would yell back. Sid would act like he didn't understand. He said, "How much?" $42, Harry would say again. Sid would then turn to the customer and say,
a conversation with Doug Adams.
Don't ruin the story yet.
Okay.
Sid would then turn to the customer and
At least
say,
he said yet.
Sid would then turn to the customer and say, "That suit price is $22. The customer didn't hesitate, immediately putting $22 on the counter and leaving with the suit. The brothers' price anchor had worked again. So here they created a price anchor of $42 or $44 in the consumer's mind, and the real price was $22.
I think he refers to that as moon prices, right?
Moon prices, right. When you go into a retailer and they say the price is 50 off. So you're looking at something you think is $10, $100, whatever it is, and they give you 50 off. They're changing you off the anchor. And you're thinking you're getting such a bargain.
And that's a common practice with not just car sales, but jewelry sales, especially.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, but it becomes a question of pricing strategy as to how you strategize your pricing position, how you go about. How
and
you
it
go to
also
market.
depends. By saying that, I realize that the intelligent consumer, most of the consumers don't necessarily do a lot of research to find out, okay, what are the material costs, what are the shipping costs, all those kinds of things in order to develop a reasonable concept of the pricing of whatever.
Yeah, but how do you have the capability to do that?
Internet.
Well,
Now, didn't used to.
Well,
and I think that event alone is providing a way for consumers to be much more wise in their purchases.
Well, the example you give is that I remember we used to sell automotive parts, and when General Motors, when they went to buy this part, the buyer was graded on
euphemistically known as Generous Motors.
Okay, whatever, General Boomers. But they used to be graded as to how close they could buy to this cost, and they would sit down and estimate as to how they thought we'd make it. So they would get the material costs, they would get the process, and they would say, okay, this item costs 85 cents to make.
Right.
You can make 15% or whatever it is, so you can sell it for $1.
And before they learned about Kaizen, then it was planned obsolescence, and that's how the auto industry actually made the money.
Okay,
with spare parts.
But the aspect here is that the buyer was graded on that, and they didn't really know. And you're finding more of that today, because I'm hearing of circumstances where major distributors are asking their suppliers to come in and tell them what the cost breakdowns are.
Speaking of cost
which
breakdown,
they're not doing. Okay.
We're going to go for a breakdown for just a moment. Thanks for listening to Two Small Biz Guys. We hope you're enjoying the show. We'll be right back with you.
Two Small Biz Guys with Zen and Ray. We'll be back after this.
The digital world is vast. Is it working for you? Would you like some qualified help? Zen Benefiel is a wonder with social media who leads focused and organized workshops on multiple platforms like Facebook, Google+, and LinkedIn. He leads by example, not theory, and teaches you how to live large and lively on the web. From blogs to SEO, his web presence speaks for itself. Take advantage of his expertise. Visit BeTheDream.com and click on Web Wizardry. Hire him while you can. Are you a small business owner looking for education and information and don't have time for school? Is there an area of your business you'd like to know more about but aren't sure where to go or who to ask? Practical Biz U is an online repository of small business courses now available to you on the web. There are single class options, bundles for specific areas, and monthly memberships for ongoing learning opportunities. Go to practicalbizu.com and sign up today.
Business owners want to call their own shots, make appropriate income, and control their destiny. Our passion is to help you achieve your goals. A Pro Peer Advisory Board is just the thing. It's a confidential monthly meeting of non-competitive owners facilitated by a pro who has walked in your shoes. He's your mentor and tormentor, moving you ahead. When you have issues or opportunities keeping you awake, where do you get help? Pro boards give support and non-biased feedback from your peers. To sample a free Pro President's board meeting, email ray@propres.com. There's no commitment or charge. Email ray@propres.com. You're listening to Two Small Biz Guys. Now, back to your hosts, Zen Benefiel and Ray Silverstein.
Well, we hope you've been enjoying our discussion about demand curves and price elasticities and being prone and upright and framed and all that kind of stuff. But right now, we're going to get back to the actual pricing, and Ray had made some comments on the break that I'll just let him take off with that.
Oh, okay. Well, first, I said we ought to talk about price pay per use. But before we get into that...
I was getting there. Okay.
We ought to talk about price differentiation very quickly. And differentiation basically means that you have, for the same item, you have different prices, but you create what they call fencing. So, for example, if a price differentiation would be...
I'm going to take offense at that.
I wish you would, because right now I can't say it straight.
I'm going to go through the gate.
Okay, but the aspect is that if you say, okay, buy one, it's $5. Buy four,
$5.
okay, buy four, it's $12.50. So in essence, you're saying, okay, the price has gone from $5 down to $3 and say 12 cents. Okay, so what the aspect is, in order to get the $3.12 price, I have to buy four of these at one time. So the differentiation is that the price is $5.
Did you have discounts on filters, Ed?
What's that?
Did you have...
Come on, pay attention.
Sorry, I'm reading an email that's to you and me. So.
A little slow on the uptake on that one. So did you offer multiple discounts on your filters?
No.
Okay.
No.
Never mind then.
Well, I did not. Not on that one because why? If they're selling like crazy, why would I discount them?
See, that goes back to the aspect, why give up contribution margin when you don't have to?
Exactly.
That's a smart business guy.
Yep.
But price differentiation says, okay, if I want to move more product, or I want to create where people are in the demand curve. So some people in the demand curve are willing to, in the example, are willing to pay $5, and some people say, I don't want to pay it. I only want to pay three and a quarter, or something like that. So I create a fence that says, you want to pay 3 1/4, you got to buy 4, 5, whatever it might be. It might be you got to pay me in advance. So so you can go out with price differentiation, have a different price to different people depending upon the terms and condition that they have to buy. So it can be very interesting in that respect.
And the pre-purchase does help on the manufacturing cycle.
Well, you talk about a lot of contractors, and
right.
a lot of contractors always want to get money in advance.
Sure. Well, they got to go buy materials.
Well, my
right? Or they're trying to get you to
finance their business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whenever they
Isn't that a good business?
Whenever they ask me for that, I always ask them for their financial statement because
yeah,
I'm saying I'm making an unsecured loan to you, and then they kind of look at me with glazed eyes. But it generally works. But going back, we were talking about pay per use, and I think that's very interesting because this is really, it was there before the internet. When I was reading the book, he gave 2 examples, and I thought one was very interesting. He talked about GE.
Right.
When they sell aircraft engines, I don't know how they work.
Pounds of thrust.
But you pay for thrust.
Right.
So therefore, the price is not determinate.
We're not going to shove it down your throat, but you're going to pay for the thrust.
Right. Right. So the aspect is it goes when you pay for thrust, you don't know how you might be paying for this for 20 years. So therefore, the price isn't set at the beginning. It's not a fixed price. It goes on and on. Michelin tires. You pay for truck tires primarily. You would pay for use, revolutions, or wear. So their tires had longer wear, so therefore they got more price. When you compare price of a Michelin versus another tire, it was probably more expensive. Right. But when you consider the total use factor, it probably costs the truck no owner less.
Well, and that's perfect on a P&L statement for amortizing the value of a product or a purchase over time. It kind of fits that model much better.
Okay, but it's a pay-per-use. When you go to Google and you want to search something and you put up an ad on Google, it's pay per click.
Right.
And did you receive anything? You didn't receive anything. You received information. You received a prospect. So it's the aspect of pay per use, and you find more and more theories. Like we talked about it for the radio show for sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can determine the number of clicks. Maybe we, instead of having a sponsor pay for the show in total, that they would pay for the number of clicks.
Right.
So therefore,
for the number of listens, when you got over 100,000 listens, as far as we've gotten, that's value.
Okay, so you take your business and you think
Right.
about your business. He gives an example in the book about in Europe about the turnstiles going into the washroom. Because in Europe, the washrooms aren't free.
That's a revolving door.
That was more than that, I'll tell you. I'll tell you one, people thought they were really flushed by this whole idea, but I can see a few groans.
We're going to
here.
throw this one in the can.
Let's just wipe it away.
Oh, okay, I think we're done with that. But the aspect is, how can you take your product and put it into a pay-per-use? Because therefore the price becomes indeterminate. I mean, the price can be $5. It can be, the price might be $1,000. Maybe it might end up being $5,000. So it really depends on how you sell the concept, and I think it's a very interesting way to possibly price certain products or services.
Subscription-based services, I think, are a lot of what use that model today, at least on the internet, for all kinds of different things.
Well, for example, you do SEO work.
I do.
So maybe you will go to somebody and say, "I'll tell you what, I'll design your website, and my design is so unique and so forth and whatever that you pay me per click. And every time that person clicks on your website, I'll get paid so much. Maybe it's a dime, a quarter, a buck, whatever it might be."
Mm-hmm.
So the problem with this whole concept is that you need to have cash flow in the beginning because you're putting out work, product, and service, and not getting paid.
Correct.
So,
correct, and that's a great idea too. I might try that out. You just never know. I've had some fairly good success. Now, you were talking about I'm doing hand signals with Ed here in the studio. It's like, all right, that was just too funny.
I'm glad it was hands and not finger.
Yeah. Well, we were
a little from column A, a little from column B.
Right, but it was between the lines. So there's also the whole idea of diminished pricing, like the value, and I want to bring this example in because it's so cool. That first beer is much better and more valuable.
That's marginal utility. That's prospect theory.
The utility of it is just, it's phenomenal, especially if you've been out playing golf, you're all hot and sweaty, you come in and that first beer is just like, it's gold, right? So
what's the second one worth?
a little less.
And what's the third one worth?
Even lesser. And by the fourth one, you don't care.
That's right. So it might be even worth more to the seller. So the price point goes from maybe $7 to $5 to $3 to $8.
Yeah, we got a U-shaped curve there.
Because they don't even know when they get to the fourth beer what they're paying.
Right. So what do you think are, synopsizing your best advice for someone that's considering their pricing factors? Read the book?
I would suggest read the book. I think the book's an interesting book. It's called Confessions of the Pricing Man. But also, I think if you're in business...
We'll have that available on our website, too, at twosmallbizguys.com.
You can get my crib notes on the book, which happens to be 12 pages.
And you'll be able to get that just for the price of your name and email.
Right. But the aspect is, if you're in business, you have to think about pricing. You have to be involved in pricing.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to our bantering about... I was going to try and be illiterate on that, but I'm just illiterate today.
You were going to try to be illiterate?
No, I was going to try to be alliterate.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
I didn't enunciate properly then, if you didn't hear me correctly. So we hope that you've heard us correctly and that our bantering's been able to give you some better choices and ways to think about your pricing. By all means, visit our website, pick up the Crib Notes that Ray put together on the book Confessions of the Pricing Man, How Price Affects Everything by Herman Simon. And thanks for listening to this show. We'll be back with you next week.
Thank you for listening to Two Small Biz Guys with Zen Benefiel and Ray Silverstein. You can hear Two Small Biz Guys live every Wednesday at noon or catch their show on demand anytime 24/7 right here on StarWorldWideNetworks.com.